Hi, I'm Zeke.
And I'm Jeanette. Welcome to
Oh My Geekers. Today we have a guest. My dad and my mom's husband, Gabe Thrasher.
Hello. Hello, wife. Hello, child.
Today we're going to talk about Pixar's rules of story structure. We are huge fans of Pixar, so we're going to do kind of a rapid fire session here, right? Okay, let's start off. All right, let's go to Zeke. Zeke, what are we going to talk about today with Pixar?
Pixar's rules of story structure. We're not going to get through all of Pixar's rules because there's like 22. We're just going to do about 15, 5 for each movie we're doing. We're going to be reviewing Toy Story, Ratatouille, and WALL-E.
Okay, before we get started, I just want to ask each of you guys, so let's start with Gabe. What is your favorite Pixar movie?
My favorite Pixar movie is WALL-E.
WALL-E? Why
Yes,
WALL-E?
I like WALL-E. Because I like sci-fi, and so that, robots in space, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like the fact that through the first probably 30 minutes of the movie, there's no dialogue. And I think that's really creative and hard to do with a child's cartoon. Well, maybe not a child's cartoon. It was, more of a movie, but for them to do that coming off of Cars and Bug's Life and Toy Story and Ratatouille, I think that's kind of cool.
And what's interesting about that is that nowadays cartoons are so fast-paced.
Yes.
As opposed to even the older Pixar movies where we thought those were fast-paced back in the day. And now looking back, they're very
Take
nostalgic.
an episode of like Phineas and Ferb, for example. It's so fast. Like in 5 minutes, it seems like they've told 30 minutes of story. So
yeah, it could be information or it could be overstimulating, in my opinion, when you're watching a cartoon and it's so fast paced that you kind of miss the storyline, and that's why Pixar movies are such a favorite of everybody's, is because of the storyline. There's some tear jerkers and they're very creative. Zeke, what about you? What's your favorite Pixar movie?
I have the same opinion as Dad, and mostly for the same reasons.
So you're a WALL-E fan?
WALL-E fan.
Okay. Well.
So why don't we do something different with top 5?
Oh, top 5?
Top 3. Sorry, 5 is a bit much because I have my own theory about Pixar that I'll share later, but top 3, starting with Jeanette.
Okay, top 3. From the very first one that I think I felt like I could relate to was Ratatouille. And I think what I like about Ratatouille is the main character. Well, wait, there's 2 main characters, right? There's the rat, and then there's
Linguini.
Okay, I never know his name. I just know him as like the redheaded nerd of the movie. But I do, when I'm watching the movie, I know who he is. So I like him because I feel like I can relate to him. I feel like just my personality type is Linguini. I feel like on the job site, I was him. That was me, like tripping over everything and everybody getting like mad at me for not knowing the menu and all this crazy stuff. So, so I like that part. And then just all it's just such a good movie. So let me go to the next one. Number 2 for me would be Incredibles Part 1. I feel like probably every mom could relate to Elastigirl, and she's got 2 different lives going on, like but then she has to maintain like her sanity and all that. So and then my favorite part is when she was walking past her reflection and she looked at her backside and was like, what the heck is going on here? I don't know why that was funny. See, that's why I like Pixar, is because I can completely relate. And then it's so funny when, what's the black dude's name that, Frozen?
Frozone.
Frozone. I like where he's like, where's my super suit? I mean, who doesn't know that line? Everybody knows that line. And so it's an iconic movie, in my opinion. And then I really, really have a toss-up between Bug's Life and Toy Story. I mean, I like Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, and even 4, all wrapped up in one. So, and Bug's Life, so I'll lump those all into 3. And I can go on and on about that, but we might be here forever, so.
Zeke?
I think favorite would be, I said Wall-E. Second favorite would be probably Ratatouille again. It just gets like how cooking is an art and not just food, like manufactured food, and it gets like, I like the character of Anton Ego. He's like a good sort of, I would say maybe anti-hero, I believe. He's not really an antagonist. The little chef guy is the antagonist. But like Anton Ego has this sort of
Ego.
this ego until he takes the bite of the ratatouille and he's like,
Spoiler alert.
Number 3, that one's kind of a hard one. I would have to probably say, I would probably have to say, I'll just go with Monsters, Inc. It's just like funny, and it's a very interesting idea because most fantasy stories, and yes, I believe that Monsters, Inc. could be arguably in the realm of fantasy. That there are some elements that make it sci-fi, but it is fantasy. But most fantasy stories, they have the character, they go from the, if portal fantasy, meaning going from ordinary world to
Like
the monster, no, like Narnia, like going through the wardrobe and coming out the other side, and it's Narnia. Most stories have the point of view character as a human from the ordinary world, but in this one it has the point of view character as someone from the special world. So we get the ordinary life, and then we see the viewpoint of what if someone from another world came into your world.
I like that. I'd say Monsters, Inc. is a really good movie. I think it's super clever. All the little things like Harryhausen. If you don't know who Harryhausen is, you should Google him.
I think this is about the cool thing about Pixar, not to interrupt, but I have to, is that I love
all the
just
quotable
the
moments.
quote of, where you could quote things. Like if you and I went on a date and like we were having an argument, I would be like, sushi, you think this is about sushi? I don't know.
Okay, so for me, Wall-E, number 1. Number 2 would be Toy Story 3. I think Toy Story 3 is probably one of those perfect
Tearjerkers.
as far as storytelling is like concludes a trilogy, and I could say that they could have very well ended the whole
Toy Story.
that part of the franchise, and it would have been perfect. Like that ending was kind of ideal.
But Toy Story 4 was good though.
Toy Story 4 was good. It was okay, but it was unnecessary, in my opinion.
It was a good story. It didn't
need to be told. Kind of like Last Jedi, but that's a whole nother
podcast.
A whole nother series of podcasts.
Series. Like maybe 20 series.
Yeah. And then I think that I really like Incredibles, the first one. I think it's introducing that whole world is really cool. And I remember when it first came out, I wasn't really too excited to see it.
Superheroes.
Because it was superheroes, and that's just not my thing. But after watching it, I was like, man, this is really done well, and it's pretty cool. And Brad Bird's a really good director.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. I think that's whichever one.
He did Ratatouille, and he did The Incredibles.
Yeah, I've watched documentaries on him.
Yeah, I guess he's pretty intense.
He's intense, but he wants it to. He's a perfectionist. Yeah.
If you look at Iron Giant, which could be an entirely other episode, that's a really well made.
That's an iconic movie.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
really good. But anyways, Zeke, moving right along. Sorry, that was a little.
That's okay.
Segue.
I liked it.
You should leave in the comments. Leave your favorite 3 Pixar movies, and maybe the reasons why, to get some conversations going.
So, Pixar's rules of storytelling. Pixar once released some of the rules they follow when writing a story, and so we're going to go through 5 for each movie we're going to be reviewing, starting with Toy Story. And one of the first rules is once upon a time there was blank, every day blank, one day blank, because of that blank, until finally.
How is that a rule? I mean, so you're basically...
You put in the blanks.
So if you were writing a story, you would use that as a template for like an outline.
Okay.
So once upon a time there was
Woody.
Every day
He was the
hero.
favorite toy.
Yeah, the favorite toy. One day Buzz Lightyear comes along. Because of that,
They get lost.
Until finally...
They hug and make up.
Right, they become friends.
So if I were writing a story, I could actually use the template for Pixar.
For your own story, too.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so once upon a time there was a dog named Ray. Then one day, every day, she's adored and worshipped as the top dog. Then one day, Blondie comes in the mix, and because of that, she becomes depressed. Until finally she dies.
Oh no, I was going to say
become
until
buddies.
finally she just gets used to it. That's sad.
Okay. Sorry.
Those are our dogs, by the way.
Yeah, Ray and Blondie, they're characters.
So Gabe, why don't you go with number 2?
Okay. What is your character good or comfortable with? And then throw the polar opposite at him.
What is it?
That's very good. See?
What is that supposed to mean?
So what is your character good or comfortable with? So in Toy Story, Woody being the main character, he's good at he's
lassoing.
He's good at rounding up all the toys, and everyone looks up to him as the leader, and he's comfortable with that. That's his life. That's what he's known for is just being popular
and an organizer, organizing
and he organizes
people.
Everyone. And then the polar opposite is Buzz Lightyear, and Buzz Lightyear is
oblivious,
kind of oblivious, and I guess is almost he is kind of the polar opposite.
Well, because you have
the
cowboy, and then you have space,
and then the space hero,
but
they kind of have the similar attributes though, because
they're both law.
They're both egotistical.
Mm-hmm.
They're both kind of in their own world, and they're both good at wrangling everyone together.
They're both popular, basically.
They're both popular, but and I missed this. It says challenge him, and then how does he deal with it? So
you challenge
throw
your
Buzz
character.
Lightyear at the character.
Okay.
So that's the polar opposite. And then you challenge him,
to deal with
which Buzz Lightyear kind of challenged him at every point. Not directly, but kind of indirectly.
Mhm.
And then how does he deal with it? Well, Woody freaked out.
it.
Which
Yeah.
makes it interesting and
Yeah,
fun for a viewer to watch.
But the cool
listen.
thing, how he deals with it, is that he actually humbles himself and realizes
In
that,
the very end.
yeah, towards the end, and then that's when, both of them are humbled.
Right.
That's how they actually deal with it, and they actually realize, oh, it wasn't so much Woody, but it was what's his name, Buzz, where he realizes that he's Mrs. Nesbit now. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so Zeke, why don't you go with number 3?
Number 3, give your character opinions. A character being passive or malleable is easy for you as a writer, but poison to your audience.
What is that supposed to mean? So, give us an example.
I think it means make your character a gray character, like neither really good nor neither really bad, not a saint or a mwahaha villain.
Mm-hmm.
He has opinions. He's like, Woody's not evil, he just...
Well, I think also too it means that you want them to have a defined character.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them to just kind of be like going through life. Like it wouldn't be interesting for any of the characters. I think all of the characters in Toy Story have very defined personalities. Like Rex, he's a dinosaur, but he's super scared of everything. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he's just, I'm just a dinosaur for dinosaur's sake. He's actually got like a pretty defined personality. Same with the potato head guy. He's very strong-headed and...
I understand what it says, give a character being passive or malleable. I'm not sure what malleable means. It's easy for you as a writer, but is poison to your audience.
Because no one wants to watch someone that's passive.
They want, so you want them to have
some sort of a strong personality.
Is that what it means by give your characters opinions?
Right.
What is give me an example for if you wanted to give your character, use a Pixar character.
Well, I mean, look at the potato head. He had he likes Woody, but he also kind of like pokes at Woody, and he's the loudmouth in the series. Like he's always he's always poking at Woody and kind of making fun of him, and he's an instigator, and you come to expect that from him. Like you're like, once Potato Head gets in the scene, there's going to be a wisecrack or some sort of like something that's going to poke at either Woody or
So as a writer, let's use Bug's Life. So let's use a different Pixar movie. If I were to give my character an opinion in that movie, what would be the opinion for...
Well, look at Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't passive.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what he wanted. You have a character that knows what he wants. He wants the food. He wants to be in charge. He wants to.
But not every character is that way in Bug's Life.
Correct, but those are minor characters. Like your main characters have to have something that's driving them.
Okay, who's the opposite main character?
Would be Flick.
Flick.
He wants to be accepted. He wants to be involved. He kind of wants to be the hero, but
an inventor.
Yeah, but he can't because he's so out of the box that the rest of the colony can't deal with him. But
but he's not passive.
Where he's coming from. He's not passive. He's a
go-getter.
Not just kind of like, he's not like, just doing
he'll
his
jump
thing
off of a building if you follow his dreams.
Right. And so that's what makes those characters really interesting.
Malleable.
But if they weren't, if they were just very easygoing, not gonna cause problems, not gonna give their opinion, then no one's gonna malleable like clay, like it could be formed.
Oh, okay.
You
want them to have
them to already be kind of defined as you don't want to. Yeah, they're gonna go through their arc, their character development from the beginning to the end of the story, but you don't want them to be so just willy-nilly that it's boring to.
This is really helping me with my book, by the way. So let's go on to number 5. Are we on number 4?
Number 4?
Okay, number 4. If you were your character, how would you feel? honesty lends credibility to unbelievable situations. So, Zeke, if you were your own character, you would want to know when you're writing a book, how would I feel? How would I go through that? That's why I think Pixar does so good, because everyone can relate to
Sure.
like in the movie Cars. Let's just think. I don't know why all of these characters are just. I can't.
Well, they're very human, and I think that's why people identify with them so well, is because, that everyone can relate to rejection, or they could relate to
Well, with Cars,
right.
what happens? In the beginning, he's like the big shot.
Failure. It's a lesson in failure and not giving up. So, everyone knows what it's like to fail at something. Doc failed at something. Yeah, but
like Lightning McQueen and Doc were like at the top of their game in life. Like they had risen to the top, and then they had a lot of pride about their achievements. But both of them had a lesson in humility and what it meant to slow down in life. And so I guess that relates to everybody on a personal level. Like it could relate to like a mom and a dad who are just working for for that dollar, and then they leave their kids kind of on the sidelines, and then they come back to reality. It could, be somebody that really is well off, and they think that they're all that in a bag of chips, and then something happens to them, like they might get in an accident and not have the mobility of their legs anymore, there's so many different
to be
anything,
relatable, anything.
And I think I'm not saying that people who who are younger who write are less of a writer, but I do believe that the older you are, the more experiences you have to write about. Go ahead, Zeke.
Yeah, in Toy Story, it's an unbelievable situation, like toys coming to life. But of course, if we were a toy and we were the favorite, of course we would feel cheated or rejected if a new toy came into the mix, because we know how it feels when like that new player on the team comes in and he's a better catcher or thrower or whatever they do in baseball.
That's a really good point. Even in the Christian realm, you go to church, you're serving, you're kind of the big man on campus, and everybody's looking up to you, and then some young whippersnapper comes in and they're the new wine that comes in the old wineskin, and has to finally move over and say, hey, I need to let other people come in and join in serving together. And you could either be like a Pharisee and just get all mad and be like, look at these young people in their skinny jeans and tattoos and this and that, like, this is my world,
I will not share it with an infant.
And so that was a quote from what, Zeke?
Jesus of Nazareth. We should do one on that.
That would be cool.
Okay.
So, number 5.
Rat patootie.
Coincidences that get characters in trouble are great. Coincidences that get them out of trouble is cheating. Ooh.
What does that mean, Gabe?
Yikes. So no one wants to. Oh man, how do you explain this?
Give an example.
Like, I'm trying to.
Is
think,
there a Pixar movie?
Yeah, in Toy Story, there's a coincidence
that gets them in trouble.
Woody wants to get rid of Buzz just for a little bit. He wants to push him
out of the window.
Not out of the window. He wants to push him under the desk so that
he could go to the
arcade.
Right.
But the coincidence is that he's pushed out of the window instead.
So now he has to go save Buzz in order to save himself. And then they end up both lost. Now it would be a weird thing if they just coincidentally got picked up and ended up, back at home safe. But instead, the fun of the story is they get picked up by Sid, and that guy is dangerous, and one of them or both of them can end up blown up or, set on fire or something.
So the cool thing about this rule of story structure is that that coincidence that gets them out of trouble is cheating, and that's true because you're basically not giving the reader or the viewer, in this case, because they're movies, time to build off of what was I going to say?
Well, you're not giving the viewer an opportunity to feel emotion, because if they just coincidentally get picked up by the mom and end up back home, it's not fun. Movie's over.
Movie's over.
Yeah, there's no fun there. There's no emotional.
Yeah, the adventure.
The adventure.
That's what
there's
I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. It had totally flew out of my mind. So a coincidence that gets your character into trouble are great. And why? Because when they get in trouble, that's when the adventure truly starts. And so you're basically developing, conflict for them. And you need a resolution? You need a resolution for that conflict. So the coincidence that, oh, wow, all of a sudden they're out of trouble, then you don't, like you said, you don't have a story. Fun. Yeah.
There's no fun in it.
Mm-hmm. So let's go on to Ratatouille. And we're going to go through these rapid fire questions.
So admire characters for attempting more than what their successes have been.
So what exactly does that mean, Gabe?
I think that
Remy. And Linguini. They try, right? And it's not necessarily that they succeeded or failed, but that they tried.
Mm-hmm.
Their attempt at something is part of it, because you don't always get the outcome in real life that and if the story always ends on this, because in the end what happened, the business closes down, Remy becomes this great chef right in the end, but then everything kind of gets reversed and everything closes down, and
we were talking about this out. We were talking about this the other day. When somebody has a success story, it doesn't seem so much like, a like heart. It doesn't pull at your strings unless this person came from kind of a bad background, like maybe from poverty and they worked really hard, and all odds were against them. And then all of a sudden they have a bachelor's or a master's or whatever, when all odds were against them. But then
it's more fun.
Yeah, it's more
to hear. It's better of a story.
Yeah,
it's an underdog.
The underdog, somebody that gets into sports, and if they were rich, and they had everything going for them, not that that's wrong, but somebody that maybe has gone through, like a single parent home and all that. And then all of a sudden they become like a basketball star, and they get to share their experience with everybody. They get to share with people who say, well, I could never become that. And I think that's a good.
It's easier to relate to.
Yeah.
Jesus could have been a rich king, and been born into like this royal family in Israel, but instead he came as, poor, a poor person,
rejected,
in a poor family. And so he can relate to the majority of planet Earth, because the majority of the planet is in poverty or in some sort of struggle. And so that's,
Number 2, keep in mind what is interesting to you as an audience, not what's fun as a writer.
So you're always keeping your audience
engaged.
In mind.
They could have done a bunch of other things in Ratatouille, but
they chose a rat of all things. It could have been a cat, but that's not as fun.
One thing that's always interesting as an audience is food. You could relate to everyone when it comes to food. So,
and they wanted something that was cooking.
If you think about it too, think about the fact that what is most hated at a restaurant?
Rats.
So that's the genius of that story too, is that now you have a rat making food.
That looks good.
So it's like you're taking something that's
Polar,
completely
yeah.
absurd and
Yeah.
what you would
It's
not.
an oxymoron.
Yeah, almost an oxymoron.
Okay.
And then with Anton Ego, like, what's the worst thing for a chef? What could happen besides the health inspector coming? What's the worst thing that can come into your restaurant? It's a food critic.
Right. That's out to destroy restaurants.
Yeah, and it gives you that intenseness, like what's going to happen. Number 4, when you're stuck, make a list of what.
Oh, we already.
Oh, 3. Sorry, we're on 3. Go ahead, Zeke, read that.
Simplify, focus, combine characters, hop over detours. You'll feel like you're losing valuable stuff, but it sets you free.
So what does that mean, Zeke?
It means just edit your story and edit your characters to a way that will speed the story up. Like, you may feel like, oh, I'm losing all these great characters and these great storylines, but actually it makes the story too long and you have to deal with more characters than you need.
So for me, I have a trouble with that because when I'm writing a novel, I want to put as much content in there as I possibly can, but then I feel like I'm,
being weighed down by it.
Yes.
And they always say
so
that
that's a balance.
Whatever isn't moving the story forward, get rid of it.
Yeah, they had Gusteau in the early drafts, and he was alive, but that was kind of weighing them down.
Right.
So they got rid of Gusteau.
He was kind of large.
They got rid of Gusteau, but of course they simplified him to be like this little
Ghost.
shoulder angel.
Yeah,
Right,
Ghosto.
Right.
Well, and then also I think when you are writing a story, I think this is why writing clubs
And
are.
you never see the wife, or you never see the girl, Linguini's mom.
Yeah.
She's only referenced in the letter.
Yeah.
When they could have added this long backstory with Gusteau and the mom and Linguini as a kid. They just get right to it, which is cool.
Well,
so your imagination can fill in all the
And I'm
blanks.
almost positive that it takes a small village to help you write a book. But maybe I'm wrong in that because I haven't really met a whole lot of people who've written books. But
Number 4, when you're stuck, make a list of what wouldn't happen next. More often than not, the material that gets you unstuck appears.
You don't know what to do, so what you make a list of is what you don't want to do, and then that will narrow down your options of what you
it's kind of like
do.
writer's block. If you have writer's block and you're not sure how to move the story along, if you just make a list, maybe start with like 5 or 10 different things. I would say 5 things that you don't want to happen. To me, that would be hard because my dyslexia would get in the way of that one. Number 5, you have to know yourself and know the difference between doing your best and being fussy. Story is testing, not refining. Zeke, explain.
I would say that you have to let yourself go. You don't need it to be
perfecto.
Yeah. You just need to be doing your best, not being fussy
or nitpicking. That's my problem.
Story is testing, not refining.
Oh, that's a
so
big
you're
one.
testing what works and not
trying to
got it.
So
what would be an example of that, Zeke, as far as knowing yourself, knowing the difference between doing your best and being fussy? So they could have taken a long time developing Linguini's backstory and his skills, and I think they didn't. And they really didn't do Remy's either. They never talked about how he had the gift of smelling.
Where his mom is.
Or where his mom is.
From what I can see from Ratatouille, it seems as though they focused more on specific main characters, which was everyone in the kitchen. And, the 2 main...
there's only 2. It was just the rat and the guy.
Yeah, and then
they
everyone
didn't even
surrounding...
really get into Colette or even the chef, the main villain. You don't really hear a whole lot
No.
about his backstory. You don't know why him and Gusto were working together,
Yeah.
or
why he's a sellout now.
right. Why he's using him to sell millions and millions of burritos.
Yeah, it just seems like they narrowed it down instead of being fussy and nitpicking on
Right.
even on the actual details of the main characters. They still even narrow down the main
Right.
characters.
Because there's a lot there. There's a lot of possible backstory for everyone, and you don't really.
This could really help someone who struggles, someone like me, who struggles with writing blocks, because I definitely do that a lot.
Okay, so now we're on
Moving
to
on
Wall-E.
to Wall-E.
Trying for a theme is important. However, you won't see what the story is about until the end of the story. Got it? Now rewrite it. So what does...
So in Wall-E, John Lasseter and all the writers went to a restaurant and sat down and talked about what they're going to do. The last one they talked about was the story of a robot named Wall-E, but they didn't think, oh, let's tell an environmentalist story out of this. They just had this idea, oh, what if humanity left Earth and forgot to turn off the last robot? They didn't get into the theme of the story. They just had to write it.
They had
first.
the concept, the general concept. Yikes.
So it's okay to write a whole entire story and then rewrite it?
And then rewrite it. Look for the plot in the story you've already written.
Well, this is like a full-time job already. Next.
Yeah.
Come
up with your ending before you figure out the middle. Seriously, endings are hard. Get yours working up front. That's I've heard that
That's
before.
hard.
That start with the end first and then work backwards. Figure out how your
What?
characters got to the end.
That would be, but how does one do that by themselves? Is it okay to ask people for
Sure.
help?
And you look at other pieces of work too.
Mm-hmm.
You look
Inspired.
and see.
Okay, now that you're thinking about other pieces of work, I know this is about Wall-E, but let's kind of like backtrack to Bug's Life.
Right.
That's pretty much the story of Magnificent Seven.
Which is the story of the Seven Samurai, an old Kurosawa movie.
So that's like 3 stories,
Right.
like written,
So basically they just adapted an old samurai movie
and just put bugs to it.
into Bugs, which is really clever and
And
cool.
okay,
and if you
right?
guys have not seen Magnificent Seven or Seven Samurai, you guys should check it out.
That's one of. We'll put that in the show notes. A link to that.
That's actually relates to the next topic. Pull apart stories you like. What you like in them is a part of you. Recognize it before you use it.
Yeah, because you don't want to plagiarize stories, but you can also use kind of the emotion or thing. Well, like one of my favorite stories is The Sound of Music. I really like the whole story of that, and even with Wall-E is almost kind of like The Sound of Music.
Really? How?
Well, there's a lot of music.
There is a lot of music.
And there's 2 people in love.
Well, most stories, I think Zeke's talked about this before. How many stories are there actually? So you've got
You mean rags to riches,
rags to
Rags
riches,
to
rags to riches, riches to rags, etc.
right? And fish out of water. So you take what would be a fish out of water story? The Incredibles, right? They're meant to be superheroes, but yet they've been banned and been domesticated, and now they have to there's nothing funny. One of the funniest scenes in Incredibles is Mr. Incredible working at an insurance company, and everything in him wants to save the day. And so when he's telling the old woman who had her claim denied this is how you work the system, and then he gets called up to the boss's office and winds up throwing the boss through the wall,
like 10 walls,
yeah,
or 5 walls.
That's funny. That's fish out of water. Like he
Okay,
wasn't made to
what
work.
would
in
Wall-E
an
be though? Because you guys, Wall-E to me is a very complicated story.
Oh, it's hugely complicated.
It's more of a I wouldn't say it would be a rags to riches, but it's sort of
Definitely a story of an underdog.
It's a story of love for sure.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's a lot
But
of
that
stories.
doesn't happen till like about maybe 20, 30 minutes into the movie where you think, oh, what is this going to be about? Like he's just...
Well, I always thought that she was going to kill him. Eva.
Eva.
Yeah, I thought she was going to kill him. But,
What are the
well,
stakes?
maybe somebody out there could tell us what they think Wall-E is based on, like a template.
Well, there are stories that it is based on. Of course, you see elements of Space Odyssey in it. And there's also, it's like the story of Noah. There's like this big boat, and then this dove, who's Eva, comes and then brings back a plant to show that it's time to come back to Earth. And then it lands on a mountain, and all these people and robots come out, like
I
how
never
rebuild
thought of
the
that.
Earth, yeah.
The plant is actually a
like
character.
the olive leaf, yeah. The olive leaf.
The plant is like a little bit of
it's
a savior.
It's called a MacGuffin.
MacGuffin? What is a MacGuffin?
Go ahead, Zeke.
It's a plot device. It's something that all of the characters want and will strive to get it, like the Ring of Power. Everybody wants it, so they're gonna go out of their way to get it. Like Otto wants the plant because he wants it gone because he doesn't want to go back to Earth. And Eve wants it because it's her job.
Yeah, it's part of her programming. That's
And
what she's
then-
meant to do.
And then Wall-E wants it because he likes it.
It's really, I like that story, Wall-E, because it just reminds me of like Adam and Eve somehow.
Yeah, that's also what it is. Wall-E was lonely, Adam was lonely, and then Eve came, and then he's no longer lonely.
That's cool. That's neat.
So what are the stakes? Give us a reason to root for the character. What happens if he doesn't exceed? What happens if he doesn't succeed? Stack the odds against him.
Oh.
So yeah, Wall-E's the perfect one for that. If he doesn't get that plant where it needs to be on the ship, then all of humanity just ends up living in space forever and never gets to come back to Earth.
And what is the reason for rooting for Wall-E?
Because he's in love with Eve.
And they need to get that plant back to Earth.
Right. And he knows that if he does that, that fulfills her programming.
This is also what I like about Wall-E, is that it kind of reminds me, Otto reminds me of corrupt politicians. And
Well,
how...
that's a whole other episode.
I'm just saying. What happens if he doesn't succeed? In your mind, I think when you're writing a story, you have to give enough time and space for the person to develop what ifs, right? Like this could happen, or what would you call that?
What if?
What ifs? Okay. And then stack the odds against him. And that's what I like about good written stories. Number 5, identify with your situation and characters. Don't write cool. We want to know what would make you act that way. So when you're identifying with the situation and the characters, you don't want to write so much what's relevant. You want to write how you would act in that situation.
Like realistic.
Realistic. So, Gabe, what do you think about that one?
With Wall-E?
Yeah.
Wall-E's not really cool in any way. If you think about it, he's like outdated technology. He's a trash man. Like he's a garbage guy, right? He's the garbage collector. And it's not like he has any like cool weapons, and they all of a sudden don't, like in the middle of the film, he discovers he's got this laser on the top of it. Yeah, and all of a sudden like he's all this crazy robot. He's just this ordinary robot.
Although Eva was cool when she started shooting and blowing things up.
She had cool weapons, but it's not like he did, and all of a sudden now he's like, he actually like kind of dies in the process of saving the world, and the love at the end is what kind of brings him back. But for all intents and purposes, Wall-E's crushed at the end of the movie, and you think he's dead, You know,
Well, and then all the people sitting in their chairs in this day and age, it's not cool to portray people having, a problem, society having a problem, which would be,
Being fat and lazy.
Or being lazy and obese.
Well, one of the things that Zeke had said that he found about WALL-E, because WALL-E isn't necessarily one of the cooler Pixar movies. It's not one of the ones that get usually mentioned.
It's underrated.
In the top. It's a very underrated for Pixar movie because it just didn't do all that well as a Pixar movie was, I guess, at that time expected to do, because they were just cranking hit after hit after hit. And then they get to WALL-E, which is like the very last of all the stories that the original founders of Pixar came up with. But it wasn't one that was very critically acclaimed. And Zeke was saying that when he was researching...
one of the things they had a beef with it was that the humans were obese.
Yes.
That wasn't politically correct.
Yeah.
Wasn't politically correct. And I think
it was offensive, I guess.
I think that's stupid, because if people have a problem with obesity, like
you need to bring it to somebody's attention.
Sesame Street tells you, oh, you gotta exercise. WALL-E just shows you what happens if you don't exercise.
It shows you what happens if you just sit around and watch TV and eat.
And that's what I like about WALL-E, is because that...
Cupcakes.
Wait, say that again?
Is that how you say it? Septuacentennial cupcake in a cup.
The one thing that that I like about WALL-E is that that plant represents, it represents fruit trees, and it represents
pizza trees.
Cultivating
pizza plants,
pizza planet. So anyway, so don't always write what's relevant. Be yourself, be unique, and what would make you act that way. Gabe, what do you mean what does that mean?
Be realistic in what would cause you as a character to act in a certain way. So I don't know, in WALL-E, I guess he didn't become the robot that had all the answers or had all the cool weapons. He just used what he had, and what he had was that weird compartment where he would store the trash, and that's where he hid the plant in order to bring it to Eve.
But he would have never done that if he didn't make friends with someone who inspired him. And that's what I like about Eve, is she's pretty much his helpmate. And, in a marriage, the woman is usually the one that inspires the man to do something that can save the world.
And it's realistic because, WALL-E is oblivious.
Exactly.
Right, he didn't even know any of this. Yeah, he didn't really understand that anything was going on outside of his little world and his little cockroach. He was just
so in love with Eva that he was going to follow her to the end
of the universe.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that pretty much concludes our episode of Pixar's rules of story structure. Like Zeke said, we only covered about 15 of them. There are 22, but there is a link in the show notes to the full article where we got these from. And we'd like to know what your favorite Pixar movie is, and why you liked it. And if you would, leave a review for us on the Apple iTunes store, and don't forget to subscribe to
Oh My Geekers.